Honorable members, we will resume. Secretary General, would you please read the third order of the day?
Motion for the adoption of the report of the Executive Committee on Financial Matters, Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Secretary General. I call upon the Treasurer, the Honorable Mduduzi Matsebula, to read the motion, to move the motion for the adoption of the report of the Executive Committee on Financial Matters. Honorable Treasurer.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the report of the Executive Committee on Financial Matters of the Forum, the Treasurer's report, be adopted by the 53rd Plenary Assembly. I beg to move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? The Honorable Member from Lesotho.
Mr. President, I wish to second the motion made by the Honorable Treasurer.
Thank you. I will now call on the Honorable Matsebula to present the report.
Mr. President, the Executive Committee wishes to present the management accounts of the SADC Parliamentary Forum to the 53rd Plenary Assembly for the financial year ended 31st March 2023. The management accounts consist of the following. 1, status of mandatory member contribution as at 31st March 2023 with an update as at 30th June 2023. And 2, budget performance report as at 31st March 2023. 3, financial reports for donor-funded programs or projects. We'll start with the status of mandatory member contributions as at 31st March 2023. The current annual mandatory contributions from member parliaments stands at 1,501,500 per annum per parliament. Seychelles contribution is 127,050 per annum. That is Namibian dollars. The total revenue from mandatory contributions for the financial year 1st April 2022 to 31st March 2023 is therefore a total of 21,148,050 Namibian dollars. The Plenary Assembly is advised that the status as at 31st March 2023 is the position that will be reflected in the audited financial statements and hence is submitted for noting at this stage. As at 31st March 2023, 11 parliaments had paid their contributions in full and have no outstanding balances. These are Angola, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, Seychelles, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Namibia and Zimbabwe also made advance payments for the financial year beginning 1st April 2023. 4 countries had outstanding balances for the financial year ended 31st March 2023, namely DRC, Madagascar, Malawi, and Tanzania. 1.3 update as at 30th June 2023. Although the reporting period for these management accounts is for the period 1st April 2022 to 31st March 2023, the update on the member contributions is reported up to 30th June 2023 in order to capture the latest position for the information of the plenary assembly. The update includes mandatory contributions for the financial year 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024, invoiced as at 1st April 2023. Balance brought forward as at 1st April 2023 included prepayments made by Zambia and Namibia towards the contributions for the financial year beginning 1st April 2023, that is the current financial year. As at 30th June 2023, 3 countries still had outstanding balances for the financial year ended 31st March 2023. Namely DRC, Malawi, and Madagascar. However, Malawi only has an outstanding balance of 358,000 Namibian dollars for the year ended 31st March 2023, having made a payment of 1,143,500 Namibian dollars in May 2023. The balance for Malawi is now 1,859,499.90 Namibian dollars, which includes the amount invoiced for the current financial year. As at 30th June 2023, 7 parliaments had paid their contributions for the current financial year in full and have no outstanding balances. These are Botswana, Eswatini, Namibia, South Africa, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, and Mauritius paid yesterday, which gives us a total of 8 countries paid, that have paid. 7 parliaments are yet to pay for the current financial year. Recommendations for the consideration of the Plenary Assembly. The Plenary Assembly is requested to consider and take note of the status of annual mandatory contributions as at 31st March 2023 and the update as at 30th June 2023. The Plenary Assembly is requested to appreciate the commitment of member parliaments in ensuring that contributions are paid and to encourage those parliaments with outstanding balances to settle the same as a matter of priority. Number 2, Budget Performance Report as at 31st March 2023. Update on impact and application of policy to optimize technology for the implementation of activities. The plenary will recall that the budget for the financial year ended 31st March 2023 assumed that one plenary assembly, standing committee meetings, and other meetings would be held virtually, unless other sources of funding were made available. This was in view of the deliberate policy position that was taken to manage scarce financial resources by optimizing the use of technology to facilitate virtual meetings. In view of lessons learned from successfully holding the 47th and 48th plenary assemblies and other meetings virtually during the height of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. The plenary assembly is advised that while the forum was able to facilitate virtual meetings and plenary assemblies in the past, the membership has expressed preference for face-to-face meetings, with the executive committee resolving to prioritize face-to-face meetings at its meeting held in June 2022. This is mainly because virtual meetings have been plagued by connectivity problems in some member countries, thereby affecting the effective participation of members. The executive committee also at that time alluded to the fact that there was a noticeable decline in interactions and spontaneous quality of inputs from participants at virtual meetings when compared to when meetings were physical. In addition, the restrictions occasioned by the COVID pandemic no longer apply, and many member parliaments have reduced their investments in IT technology in comparison with those made during the pandemic. Many member parliaments are thus not tech ready to have their members log in virtually with quality Wi-Fi that can favor seamless sound and video interactions. The Plenary Assembly is advised that both the 51st and 52nd Plenary Assemblies were held physically in Lilongwe, Malawi, and Kinshasa, DRC, respectively, which prompted the allocation of funds from retained earnings to cater for the change. The Plenary Assembly is also advised that the Standing Committee meetings for the 51st and 52nd Plenary Assembly sessions were also held physically in Johannesburg, South Africa, resulting in expenditure being higher than budgeted. The Plenary Assembly may also wish to note that, fortunately, the Standing Committee meetings were largely funded by SRHR project, with GIZ and other donors also contributing due to the limited SADC PF main budget. Details of actual expenditure against budget are contained in the budget variance report at 2.2. Recommendations for the consideration of the Plenary Assembly. The Plenary Assembly is requested to take note of the above developments in order to appreciate the impact on the budget of the forum. 2.2 Budget Variance Report as at 31st March 2023. This budget variance report does not include expenditure from donor-funded budgeted income, but focuses on budgeted income and expenditure from mandatory member contributions and other income earned by SADC PF. Included in other income is interest earned and administrative fees earned from the CEDA project. In the approved budget for the financial year, the total budgeted expenditure amounts to 50,141,678 Namibian dollars. Out of this amount, 25,881,788 Namibian dollars is budgeted expenditure for donor-funded activities, which has a corresponding total budgeted income of 25,881,788 Namibian dollars, and has therefore a zero net effect on the budget for SADC PF. The budgeted expenditure for SADC PF income, that is minus donor funds, is therefore 24,259,890 Namibian dollars. In this regard, fund accountability statements for donor funding received will be reported in a separate section of this report. In addition, effective 1st April 2023, donor funds will not be consolidated in the accounts of the SADC PF to avoid overstatement of the financial position. Budget variance report. Budget expenditure of 24,259,890 Namibian dollars. The total budgeted expenditure for the financial year approved 2022-2023 budget by the 50th Plenary Assembly, less donor funds budgeted expenditure, was 24,259,890. Supplementary budget. The following resulted in supplementary budget amounts which increased budgeted expenditure by an amount of 4,325,104. Kindly refer to total of column B on the budget variance report. From 24,259,890 Namibian dollars. Refer to column A. To 28,584,994. Refer to total of column D. Brought forward balances from year ended 31st March 2022. During the financial year 2022-2023, pursuant to the approval of the 51st Plenary Assembly, the following balance of funds from the financial year ended 31st March 2022 were approved to be brought forward for use as below. A total of 473,000 Namibian dollars was brought forward towards capital expenditure not incurred in the previous year on the same budget line. A balance of 228,000 was brought forward for election observation from the same budget line. Allocations from retained earnings. The 51st Plenary Assembly considered and approved the following allocations from retained earnings. 1, that an amount of 225,000 Namibian dollars be allocated from retained earnings to Standing Committee meetings budget line to facilitate the November 2022 meetings. 2, that an amount of 1,400,000 Namibian dollars be allocated from retained earnings to Plenary Assembly budget line for the 52nd Plenary Assembly that was held physically in the DRC in December 2022 to cater for the projected budget deficit of 1,400,000 Namibian dollars in view of the fact that the approved budget had provided for one virtual plenary assembly only. The estimated total cost for the 52nd Plenary Assembly was 2.5 million. Variation of budget lines. The 51st Plenary Assembly considered and approved the following variation of funds within the approved 2022-2023 budget. 1, an amount of 120,000 Namibian dollars was varied from the mortgage capital repayment budget line to the financial expenses budget line. 2, an amount of 100,000 Namibian dollars was varied from the motor vehicle capital repayment budget line to the financial expenses budget line. And then the additional contributions from member parliaments. Contributions amounting to 504,000 were committed by 6 member parliaments towards the Angola Election Observation Mission in August 2022. Contributions from SEDA towards salaries. An amount of 1,495,104 was contributed towards the salary of program manager. Total actual expenditure. The total actual expenditure as at 31st March 2022 was 24,233,213 representing 85% of the total budgeted expenditure for the year, leaving a balance of 4,351,781, 15%. Significant unfavorable variance. The following budget lines have significant unfavorable variances as at 31st March 2023. That is a variance more than 10%. Professional consultancy and legal expenses minus 217%. An unfavorable variance of 291,994 was realized with expenditure of 426,394 against the budget provision of 134,400 Namibian dollars. Expenditure on this budget line was for payment to consultants engaged for the salary review, performance management systems, and review of the finance and internal audit manuals, among others. The unfavorable variance arose mainly because the budget line was under budgeted and was not revised to accommodate the cost of the consultancies. Yes. The consultancies were approved by the Plenary Assembly towards the implementation of human resources and financial management policy and systems that had been overdue for many years. It was recognized that the institution would realize savings on various other budget lines that could be utilized, and that, therefore, the overall total budget would not be exceeded, with total expenditure still being within the total approved budget. Travel, subsistence, and transport, 173% over expenditure. Actual expenditure was 670,107 against budgeted expenditure of 245,584 Namibian dollars, resulting in a negative variance of 424,523 Namibian dollars, which is 173%. This was caused by attendance of various regional and international conferences and meetings, including the 144th, 145th, and 146th IPU conferences, the SADC Summit in DRC, the Pan-African Parliament, and other regional meetings. The costs were higher than anticipated due to the increase in flight and accommodation costs. The attendance of the meetings is strategic in order to facilitate linkages and build relations as the forum advances towards its transformation into a regional parliament. So they are necessary. In addition, the forum convenes the SADC group meeting on the occasion of IPCU conferences in order to ensure that the common regional agenda is prioritized and advanced. Program support. The budget amount was 301,500 Namibian dollars, while the expenditure incurred was 336,831 Namibian dollars, resulting in an unfavorable variance of 35,331 Namibian dollars, which is 12% over expenditure. This budget line was used for various networking meetings and engagements towards creating and sustaining partnerships and mobilizing resources. This included attendance to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, NDI Summit on the Constitutionalism, SADC Secretariat, Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs of the Republic of Australia, German Embassy, and other international cooperating partners, as networking is the pillar for strengthening the SADC PF resource base, especially in the wake of reduced internal technical resource capacity under programs and parliamentary business department, as well as shrinking donor funding. There is need to continue to make resources, both technical and financial, available for the same. It is worth noting that some expenditure was reallocated to standing committees as the missions undertaken were related to specific standing committees such as FANR and GDHR. And then election observation. Actual expenditure was 1,312,612 Namibian dollars against a budget of 1,032,000 Namibian dollars, resulting in a negative variance of 280,612, which is 27%. This expenditure was incurred on the Angola Election Observation Mission in August 2022. The cost for ground transport, accommodation, and conference facilities were very high, driven by high demand resulting from the huge numbers of election observer missions in Angola. Contributions towards the same were committed from 6 member parliaments, with 3 already received from Mozambique, Zambia, and South Africa. The contributions of 4,800 US dollars per participating parliament are included in the budgeted expenditure amount of 1,032,000 Namibian dollars. In addition, 228,000 was brought forward for election observation from the previous financial year ended 31st March 2022. And then audit. Actual expenditure was 176,132 against a budget of 150,000 Namibian dollars. The negative variance of 26,132, which is 17%, was caused by the actual fee being higher than budgeted. Recommendations for the consideration of the Plenary Assembly. The Plenary Assembly is requested to consider and take note of the performance of the budget as at 31st March 2023. The Plenary Assembly is requested to appreciate the reasons for the unfavorable variance and the fact that the total budget was not exceeded. Where over expenditure was anticipated in good time, proposal for variance and allocation of funds were made to the Executive Committee and the Plenary Assembly. The Executive Committee submits that the over expenditure on certain budget lines was caused by the need to ensure that activities were undertaken to advance the objectives of the forum in line with its strategic plan. In addition, while in various years many activities were co-funded by cooperating partners, there has been a growing need to strengthen reliance on internal resources. Rising costs due to inflation contributed to increased expenditure. Number 3, and the last one, financial reports for donor-funded projects. SEDA, the Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights Project, SRHR, following the no-cost extension approval in 2023, the SRHR project now runs from 1st July 2019 to 31st May 2023. The total grant budget was 3,778,795 US dollars, which is 35 million Swedish kroners, to be used over a period of 4 years. The SRHR funds are kept in separate bank accounts and the financial statements are prepared in US dollar and audited separately. Financial performance. The total grant received and fund utilized during the financial years 2022, 2023, and 21 and 2022 are as follows. I'll read the 2022. 2023. Balance brought forward was 1,277,783. Grant received 467,926. Fund utilized was 1,450,923. Net restricted fund 294,796 US dollars. SEDA approved a no-cost extension of the project for 2 months from April 2023 to 31st May 2023. During this period, the SRHR funds availed as above of 294,796 US dollars approved to be utilized to finance the following: salaries of SHR employees for April and May 2023, standing committee meetings scheduled for 7 to 13 May 2023, multi-stakeholder meetings at national parliaments, and audit fees. Cost extension proposal. SADC Parliamentary Forum has further submitted a budget proposal for a cost extension of the project from 1st June 2023 to 30th September 2023 to facilitate winding up of the project. The proposal documents are being considered by SEDA. Budget variance as at 31st March 2023. The budget variance report shows expenditure against budget by budget line item. The variance between actual expenditure and the budget for SHR project are monitored on a monthly basis. As at 31st March 2023, there are no budget lines where there was any major negative variance, that is a variance of more than 10%. A negative variance of less than 10% is allowable. ADA other grant on strengthening parliamentary capacity in the SADC administered by GIZ. The grant was financed by the Australian Development Agency, ADA, and was administered on their behalf by GIZ. The total grant amount was 309,905.09 euros. The project ran from 1st March 2020 to 28th February 2023 and has since been closed. The total amount of funds received from ADA amounted to euros equaling to 213,451. Expenditure incurred as of 31st March 2023 totaled to 274,283.88 euros, resulting in a net deficit of 60,832.88 euros. A claim has been submitted to GIZ for 60,832.88 euros, as this amount is within budget in the grant agreement. Payment is yet to be received. Details of expenditure are as contained in the financial statement. You can go through in your reports. Action Aid, Accountability and Gender Responsiveness Project. The grant is financed by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SADC. The grant is administered on their behalf by Action Aid. The project runs from 1st July 2019 to 30th June 2023. The grant amount is 158,199. The donor does not require audited financial statements for this grant, but requires periodic financial reports which are submitted every 6 months. The overall goal of the project is to improve accountability and gender responsiveness in public resource management, particularly the areas of HIV, SRH services for adolescents and youth, and agricultural services, contributing to the realization of selected SADC regional commitments. Statement of financial position as at 31st March 2023. The balance of funds brought forward on 1st April 2022 from the financial year ended 31st March 2022 is $44,435 US. Expenditure incurred from the 1st April 2022 to 31st March 2023 totaled to $29,560.75 US, resulting in a balance of $14,873.94 US. The expenditure was incurred on the standing committees on FANR and TIFI. Details are as contained in the fund accountability statement. SAF-AIDS, Plan International, SADC, UNAIDS, UNFPA, UNDOC, ARASA, development of gender-based violence, GBV model law. The development of the GBV model law was completed. In this regard, SAF-AIDS and Plan International were among a group of cooperating partners that supported the process. Other partners, SADC, UNAIDS, UNDOC, UNFPA, and ARASA, made direct payments to the consultant and support services required for the meetings and consultative process in the development of the model law. SAF-AIDS, statement of financial position as of 31st March 2023, the funds brought forward as 1st April 2022 amount to $1,300 US. Further funding of $26,400 US was received during the year, bringing the total income to $27,700 US. Expenditure incurred from 1st April 2022 to 31st March 2022 totaled to US dollars 11,778, resulting in a balance of 16,322 US dollars. The expenditure was incurred on site event as standing committee meetings in May 2022. Details are as contained in the fund accountability statement. Plan International statement of financial position as of 31st March 2022. An amount of $20,000 US was received from Plan International in June 2021 towards the GBV model law. The balance brought forward as of 1st April 2022 is 114,658 Namibian dollars. Expenditure of 104,508.60 Namibian dollars was incurred towards the consultancy of the GBV model law newsletter. The fund has a balance of 10,149.70 Namibian dollars as at 31st March 2023. Other donors, APHRC, in-kind support. APHRC held 10 virtual capacity building meetings or trainings from April 2022 to March 2023 on various areas of interest. Both MPs and staff of member parliaments and the secretariat. Each meeting is estimated to have cost at least $5,500 US as detailed below. The total contribution from APHRC is valued at 55,000 US dollars. Breakdown per meeting is as follows. Interpreters 4, it's 1,800 per meeting. Resource persons 2,700. Translation 1,000. Total cost per meeting 5,500 US dollars. Recommendations for the consideration of the plenary assembly. The plenary assembly is requested to take note of the contributions from donors and cooperating partners. The plenary assembly is requested to express its appreciation to the various donors and cooperating partners for their continued commitment and support. Allow me to repeat that, Mr. President. The plenary assembly is requested to express its appreciation to the various donors and cooperating partners for their continued commitment and support. I beg to move.
Thank you, Honorable Treasurer. I shall now call on the seconder of the motion, the Honorable Speaker Sekamene, to present the address seconding the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I intend to structure my seconding statement to the Treasurer in 4 points so that we can keep it short. 1, virtual vis-a-vis physical meetings. 2, transformation to a regional parliament. 3, member parliaments as sources of funds vis-a-vis donors. 4, and last, unfavorable variances, starting with virtual vis-a-vis physical meetings. As the Treasurer has pointed out, we have come back to physical meetings after virtual meetings that were imposed by the circumstances then. In this regard, it is worth noting that the Pan-African Parliament, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and the Inter-Parliamentary Union have also, for the most part, resumed their physical meetings. In other words, this is an established trend, and for good reason, which I will come to. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Virtual meetings are, on the one hand, highly cost-effective and a huge time saver when you think in terms of planning for the meetings, the transport, and so on. Many of us have taken more than a day to arrive at this place. If this were to be a virtual meeting, there would have been no need for such waste, both in terms of financial resources and time. But on the other hand, virtual meetings don't inspire much enthusiasm among people. They don't inspire much engagement and debate experience, especially for large meetings such as the Plenary Assembly. They are also, as pointed out by the Treasurer, heavily plagued by intractable connectivity problems and have a stunting effect on the quality of spontaneity. So it is still true that nothing has been invented yet that beats eye-to-eye contact and body language. Physical meetings are, needless to mention, highly effective and much more preferred for many obvious advantages, including exposure. That I'm thinking about my own delegation, we are all new. And if this had been a virtual meeting, we will not be seeing all of you here congregating and mingling the way that we're doing. So we will be denied the advantage of that exposure. Also, the opportunity for site meetings and consultations. I have seen many of those take place right here in this meeting. Also, the smoothness of the process, that when you have a physical meeting, you know, the president knows how to anticipate and conduct the affairs such that there is the smoothness of anticipation and process. And the creation of cordiality and camaraderie among colleagues. In a virtual meetings, you don't meet with people. You only just talk to them. You may see them, but that is not really seeing them. But then, physical meetings constitute a significant drain on the meager financial resources of the forum, especially seeing the sustained rise in inflation over the past few years and the generally dwindling global economy. That is what I would like to say, just simply putting in facts relating to the comparison between virtual meetings and physical meetings, leaving the conclusion to the members to see how sensitive a balance it is that needs to be constructed. On the issue of the transformation to a regional parliament, all I need to say here is that we have had a most thrilling and lively debate on the transformation of our forum to the regional parliament, eloquently tabled by the Honorable Speaker from the Republic of South Africa and ably ventilated by the Honorable Speaker from Zimbabwe. There are good prospects. But when it comes to finances, there is the point here that with the advent of this transformation, the issue of funding will begin to loom higher and higher. And this may be one of the prohibitive factors that need to be attended to. We would much want to move towards a regional parliament, but we must take cognizance of the financial implications of such a move and do due diligence and put in place strategies to go ahead in this regard. And on the issue of member parliaments carrying the responsibility, the financial responsibility of our forum, vis-a-vis relying a little bit too much on donors. The key matters here are those of independence and sovereignty, underpinned by the old adage that he who pays the piper calls the tune. We ought to tread very sensitively as we negotiate with our development partners and come into agreements that people fear we should not then throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and find that we have increasingly lost our sovereignty. And herein lies the importance of exploring more innovative ways of cost containment and fundraising, including one, the creation of a paperless environment, as mentioned by the treasurer, such that large reports and other documents are shared on portals such that they can be accessed at the press of a button, which is also a plus on the protection of the environment, underlining our policy with regard to the environment. Two, greater and more savvy use of technology, including the use of internet and social media. 3, using virtual meetings whenever suitable and appropriate. In other words, we should not come to a totalistic rejection and abandonment of the virtual meetings. There is a lot of room for such meetings. It is just that for meetings such as this one, the plenary session, it creates a very difficult circumstance. So you might want to debate and choose when and how to continue to employ virtual meetings in order to contain cost. 4, and last, going out to find user-friendly organizations that will be willing to support the forum without imposing outrageous sovereignty comprising conditions. And if we look hard enough, there are many such organizations in the world who would be willing to support a good cause such as ours without compromising our identity and sovereignty. The last point, Mr. President, relates to unfavorable variances. I only just want to emphasize before the honorable members that the plenary assembly is requested humbly to note and appreciate that while the unfavorable variances may look unacceptably high, but the treasurer has put up a very convincing and adequate justification for them in terms of the reasons why they were undertaken. Moreover, and more importantly, the plenary session should note that the total budget was itself not exceeded in spite of these several unfavorable variances. I beg to second, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I shall now allow debate on the motion. Again, members are allocated 5 minutes, and you are requested to identify yourself. Please raise your hands, those who wish to address. Thank you. Thank you. I will start with the member from Zimbabwe.
Yes, Honorable President. Let me begin by thanking both the Treasurer General and the Seconder for the motion and the presentation of the accounts for the SADC Parliamentary Forum. Without taking away any of the good work that has been done, just to find out, Honorable President, I appreciate the fact that there was mention of migration from manual to IT, which is a plus on the organization, but also just to find out on whether, as an organization, we have migrated to IPSAS, that is International Public Accounting System, in sync with public finance management, so that at least we are moving towards a development and with the times. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Honorable
Paulina
Member.
Mpariwa from Zimbabwe.
I will call on the member from Tanzania.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And may I begin by congratulating the motion and the Secretary General with her team for all the efforts they are doing to make this thing happen well. I have 2 questions. Well, about the subscription fees, I am sure all of us are going to struggle that it is paid, and those who have not paid, then they'll pay as well. Now, my problem is the one honorable from Lesotho who seconded the motion spoke about the unfavorable variance. Now, my question is, what percentage is allowed for the variance? Say, administration should not exist, maybe 30%, 70%. Now, since it's not stated, I don't know how well qualified it is favorable or not favorable. And he ended up saying, as long as the budget did not pass, then it's not an issue. I'm not an accountant by profession, but then I don't really take it easily that was it real? No. Where was the budget supposed to pass? So these are things to be dealt with the accountants, but I request that we know exactly to what extent should the variance be too much or not, so that in future then we'll know how to argue. Me personally, maybe, I'll know how to say yes or no. Otherwise, the report was so good, and I congratulate the treasurer, hoping that in future we are going to do it even better. But it so far, so good. Thank you. I submit.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I call on the member from Tanzania. Oh, sorry, that was Tanzania. I call the member from South Africa.
Chair, thanks very much. It's Darren Bergman again from South Africa. Just to congratulate the Treasurer again for a great report. I think if people appreciate that the times we are in and the difficulties we warned about, that was an excellent report, and I think the challenges were met, and I think it must be appreciated. And there's two things that I think we need to understand, and I think the Advocate Mudenda had already spoken about it before. We, in terms of the trust and in terms of fundraising, it's either going to be one or the other. We're either going to have to fundraise or we're going to have to increase membership fees. But there's also a chicken and egg scenario, because people are only going to fund if they can see productivity. There's a difference between activity and productivity. Activity is, we can fill our diaries with talk shops, we can fill our diaries with meetings and meetings and meetings, and that's activity. But I think what fundraisers want us, or funders want to see, they want to see productivity, is what can come out of the meetings. What can we do over and above the activity? And I think that's when we are best, is when we're actually being productive. And there's some exciting proposals in the pipeline that will be introduced in good time. But I think that's where the important stuff lies, is that we need to ensure that the programs are productive, and that we are showing that the funders that we're not just about meeting on Zoom, but that we're meeting and being productive in what we do. And that brings me to the second thing, which is election monitoring, the SG's favorite subject. We are going into a series of elections in SADC. And of course, it's very hard to say which election is important and which one is not, because if you listen to everyone's report from the countries, all the countries are doing so well, and no country has any problems. Unfortunately, I think if you listen to the media outside of those countries, election monitoring is probably very important. And no country is spared the eyes of the media, and no country is spared the wrath of the election observation teams and the international media. So who should best police our countries than ourselves? And I think it's important that SADC has a handle on their own election observations by sending in their own teams first. And I've always said that election observation doesn't start at the polls on the day of elections. Election observation starts at the beginning of the end of the last term of elections. So we should already be monitoring some of those elections that are already on the calendar. And I think it's important then that we have that argument about who pays for it, which parliaments pay for it, which does SADC pay for it. But again, I bring up the example that here is where we can actually have virtual meetings. We do not need necessarily to be in the lands of the elections. Some of the most productive election observation missions have taken place virtually, where we've been able to interrogate the heads of the independent electoral commissions, the police, the army, the media, and we've had true and fair engagement with people directly on virtual platforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member, for your contributions. I will now call on the Treasurer. Oh, did you have a hand up, Honorable Speaker from Zimbabwe?
May I start by commending the Treasurer General for his very clear and balanced financial statement, and more so that, as the second did indicate, we did not exceed the budget in spite of the unfavorable items that appear in the statement. Mr. President, there's an issue that seems to have been omitted, and that is our asset, the old house that was supposed to have been sold, and some due diligence was supposed to have taken place regarding compliance with the municipality of Windhoek. That's one aspect. The second aspect of that asset was the proposal by Honorable Darren Bergman, and I thought he was going to speak to it, that there was some interest expressed to transform that property to some useful center as a library and possibly a place where conferences could be held. And I'm not sure whether it was an omission because nothing has happened in terms of what we had discussed earlier on, or there is some traction from the suggestion by Honorable Darren Bergman that the people who had expressed interest to use that property in favor of the SADC PF institution has had some development or traction in terms of implementation of the idea. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, I will now call on the Treasurer to respond to the debate. Honorable Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me to start with the Eros House. The Eros House is at a stage where the Secretariat has undertaken the following: engagement of quantity surveyor to compile bills of quantities, engagement of architect to manage the process of the corrective and renovation works, engagement of 2 valuation surveyors to provide valuations of the property in its correct state for audit purposes, following the need to have a compliance certificate before we can sell or do any other thing in regard to that property. Moreover, the executive hasn't taken a decision on the issue of the Arrows House, including the proposal to convert it into a library following the commitment taken by a donor. So I saw it as premature, really, to make it part of the report until the executive has taken a decision. I hope the plenary will be will be updated on the same issue. But nevertheless, the issue of compliance certificate, the Secretariat is making sure that the compliance certificate is obtained, and the other issues of engagement of quantity surveyor to compile the bills, and engagement of architect and other associated issues. I guess it's that would be all I can say for now, but I stand guided if there is more information to that. And then it's the issue of the percentage allowable in regard to over expenditure. 10% is allowable, but we should take into consideration the appreciation of the dollar versus the depreciation of the domestic operating currency in the last 2 years. That has had an adverse effect in terms of budgeting. And moreover, I would say that most of the items where there is over expenditure, it was approved by the executive. And then there was also a question of migrating from manual to IT. We will consider the recommendation, but it will come with budget constraints, but it is worth pursuing and exploring. We will consider the recommendations as stated from ZIM. My second, I would like to add something on some of the issues as he has indicated. Thank you, Mr. President.
Nothing much, Mr. President, except to say that the Treasurer has, I think, adequately responded to these issues. Mine is only to add that in addition to the fact that variances have been referred to the Executive Committee and have been explained and approved, there is also the issue that, which we mentioned, that the total budget was, however, not exceeded. So that in running an organization, you do expect that there could be under budgeting, but then the accountability aspect of informing the ruling body, explaining and accounting why there has been such over expenditure and getting their approval, while at the same time making sure that you don't exceed the actual budget. I think that should be adequate. But having said that, we are not accountants. I'm sure that the Secretariat could be able to add for your comfort, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Treasurer and Seconder. The Honorable Member would like to, yes, yes, I'm looking at the member from Botswana.
Thank you very
raise
much.
your hand.
Thank you, our President. I apologize to come after the responses have been made. No, just a very small one, though it appears minor, but very important. I think we forgot to make an appeal to those members whose subscriptions are still way behind. This body is dependent on subscriptions. we need to be to have our records updated. We are still grappling with this issue at the forum, and yet we want to turn it into parliament, whereby we are going to need bigger finances. In Afrikaans, we say, biki biki bank meer. So we've got to start small and big. I thank you, our president.
Thank you, honorable member. I do have a request from, is it from Seychelles? If you would,
Thank you, Mr. President.
honorable members, we are continuing after the response has been made. So I would like you to just note very specific points in response to what the treasurer has said. Honorable member, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, very specific. And I should congratulate the treasurer and the seconder as well. And I was very happy to hear that the report itself congratulated the SADC PF for this innovative approach in regards to IT, having our new portals, and everything was sent online, and we had to download the documents, the reports, and so on and so forth. But Mr. Speaker, probably tomorrow things will get better, because most of us here delegates, we don't have a facility to charge our laptops, and probably I'm just putting forward that maybe for the delegates, as of tomorrow and onwards, maybe all delegates should be connected with facilities like extension cords for us to facilitate our deliberations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, honorable member. I have the honorable member from South Africa.
Thanks. Just to answer the advocate, is just to say that we are going to have the proposal come back to the executive again, because exactly as the treasurer had said, we have to wait on the actual property itself. If the property, for whatever reason, is sold, there's no reason why the project itself cannot continue in another property, which will be something that we will look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honorable member. Do you have a further request from Zimbabwe? Before the speaker from Zimbabwe, I have the speaker, the member from Tanzania. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Being a beneficiary of the budget which was just read to us, I also want to thank the donors, because really, had they not been supportive to this, we wouldn't have been here even now. But still, I'm insisting that we should keep on with the budget which are activity-based as an advice. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable Speaker, Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm grateful for the response by the treasurer concerning our house asset. May I plead with the treasurer and the Secretary General to conclude matters expeditiously, because we don't want to lose traction from the proposal that was made by the Honorable Darren Bergman and highly supported by the Speaker of Namibia, Professor Kachavivi, who gave us some light of hope that that property would be transformed into a very positive asset for the SADC PF. And you are quite right, I agree with Botswana, that when the treasurer has responded, perhaps we shouldn't be raising issues. But in future also, the treasurer must not forget issues that have some bearing on the financial resources of our organization. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, I now put the question, the report of the Executive Committee on Financial Matters, the Treasurer's Report, be adopted by the Plenary Assembly. Are there any objections?
No objections.
There being no objections, the report of the Executive Committee on Financial Matters is duly adopted. Thank you. Thank you all for your contributions. I believe we did have another matter on the order paper, but in the interest of health, we will postpone that for tomorrow, and we will move to an adjournment. But before we disperse, I would just like to read you a small announcement, and that is to inform delegates of this assembly that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism of Tanzania has set up a pavilion with important information about tourist attractions in Tanzania. All delegates are encouraged to visit the pavilion located in front of this hall. I thank you. Honorable members, I thank you for your attention and hard work today. We will now rise to adjourn, and we will resume tomorrow morning at 9.